I'm Eleanor Thompson, 67 years old, and my heart shattered the day my only daughter Catherine gave her mother-in-law an expensive necklace at my birthday dinner, then turned to me with cold eyes saying, "You don't deserve a gift, Mom." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air while Judith, her mother-in-law, smirked victoriously. After decades of sacrifice and unconditional love, my daughter had chosen wealth and status over me. Little did she know about the beachfront villa that would change everything. Before I tell you how I turned this heartbreak into the most important lesson of my daughter's life, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself when everyone else has given up on you. Looking back, I never imagined my relationship with Catherine would deteriorate to this point. My late husband Robert and I had been high school sweethearts from modest backgrounds who worked hard for everything we had. We were overjoyed when Catherine was born, our perfect little girl with her father's sparkling blue eyes and my auburn hair. Robert worked as an electrical engineer while I taught elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough to provide Catherine with a stable, loving home. Then tragedy struck when Robert was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer, when Catherine was just 11. Within 8 months, he was gone, leaving me a widow at 39 with a heartbroken 12-year-old daughter. Those early years without Robert were brutal. I juggled grief counseling for both Catherine and myself while taking on additional tutoring jobs after school hours to maintain our lifestyle. I was determined that Catherine wouldn't feel the financial impact of losing her father. Many nights after putting her to bed, I'd sit at our kitchen table grading papers until midnight, then wake at 5 to prepare for the next day. "Mom, why do you work so much?" Catherine asked one evening when she found me asleep among a pile of student essays. "Because I want you to have every opportunity, sweetheart," I told her, smoothing her hair. "Your dad would have wanted that." And provide I did. Despite the financial strain, I kept Catherine in her dance classes where she excelled at ballet. I paid for private school tuition when the public school in our district faced budget cuts and overcrowding. I drove her to academic competitions on weekends and cheered loudly from the audience when she performed in school plays. Dating again never seriously crossed my mind. A few well-meaning friends tried setting me up, but my heart wasn't in it. "Catherine needs stability right now," I'd explain. But truthfully, I couldn't imagine loving anyone after Robert, and my daughter had become my world. As a teenager, Catherine remained sweet but began showing signs of materialism that concerned me. She became increasingly aware of what her friends had that we didn't: designer clothes, European vacations, newer cars. I tried explaining the value of hard work and saving, but I also understood her desire to fit in. "All the girls have Kate Spade bags, Mom," she'd plead, and sometimes I'd give in, cutting back on my own expenses to see her smile. By the time Catherine entered Westlake University on a partial scholarship, with me covering the considerable remainder, she had developed expensive tastes. Still, she was a dedicated student, and I was incredibly proud when she graduated with honors in business marketing. It was during her junior year that she met Derek Williams. Handsome, charming, and from a wealthy family, Derek swept Catherine off her feet. I was happy for her, but something about their relationship made me uneasy. Catherine began changing. Subtle shifts in her speech patterns, preferences, even her laugh seemed different. Then I met Judith Williams, Derek's mother. Tall, immaculately groomed, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair, and a strand of pearls that never left her neck, Judith exuded old money confidence. At our first meeting, a dinner at an upscale restaurant I could barely afford, Judith assessed me with cool blue eyes. "Eleanor, what a unique dress," she commented, her slight hesitation making it clear it wasn't a compliment. "Catherine mentioned you're a teacher. How quaint to have dedicated your life to molding young minds rather than pursuing something more ambitious." Though I smiled politely, the message was clear. I wasn't good enough. Throughout dinner, Judith dominated the conversation with tales of the family's vacation home in Aspen, their trips to Paris, and Derek's promising future in his father's investment firm. Catherine hung on every word, occasionally glancing at me with something resembling embarrassment. When Derek proposed 6 months later with a diamond that cost more than my annual salary, Catherine was ecstatic. I was happy for her, truly, but worried about Judith's growing influence. The wedding planning became a battleground with Judith insisting on controlling every detail. "Mom, Judith knows people in the industry. Catherine explained when I offered to help. And they're paying for most of it anyway. The wedding was a lavish affair at the Williams Country Club. 500 guests, most of whom I'd never met, an 8-tier cake and ice sculptures. I felt like a guest rather than the mother of the bride. During the reception, I overheard 2 of Judith's friends. The mother of the bride seems so ordinary. One whispered, "Well, Judith says they're from the wrong side of the tracks. Thank goodness Derek is rescuing the girl from that background." I held my head high and pretended not to hear, but their words stung. Despite everything, I gave a heartfelt toast celebrating my beautiful daughter and her new husband, ending with tears of genuine joy. Later, Judith gave her own speech, subtly taking credit for the couple's happiness. "I always told Derek to find someone he could mold into the perfect partner," she said, raising her champagne flute. "And with a little polishing, I think Catherine will fit beautifully into our family." The guests applauded while I sat silently, wondering if anyone else noticed the insult wrapped in the compliment. Catherine beamed, oblivious to or unbothered by her mother-in-law's implication. As they left for their honeymoon in Bali, another gift from the Williams family, I hugged my daughter tight. "I'm so proud of you, Catherine," I whispered. "Your father would be too." "Thanks, Mom," she replied, quickly pulling away. "Judith says we need to leave now to catch our flight." I watched them drive away, unaware that the distance between us had only begun to grow. After the wedding, Catherine and Derek moved into a luxurious townhouse in an exclusive neighborhood. The down payment had been a gift from Judith, who made sure to mention it whenever I visited. The spacious 3-bedroom home with marble countertops and hardwood floors was a far cry from the modest house where Catherine had grown up. "Do you like what we've done with the place, Eleanor?" Judith asked during my first visit, though she had clearly orchestrated every design choice. The home looked like a showroom, beautiful but impersonal, with none of Catherine's personality showing through. "It's lovely," I said sincerely, noticing that the handmade quilt I'd given them as a wedding present was nowhere to be seen. I tried maintaining our close relationship despite the growing gap between our lifestyles. I called Catherine twice a week, though increasingly the calls went to voicemail. I sent thoughtful gifts for holidays, books by authors she loved, framed photos of meaningful moments, hand-knit scarves in her favorite colors. "Thanks, Mom," she'd say dismissively. Judith got us a weekend at a vineyard in Napa. Or Judith surprised us with theater tickets. Meanwhile, Judith inserted herself into every aspect of the young couple's lives. They had standing Sunday brunches at her country club. She organized their social calendar, introducing them to the right people. She took Catherine shopping at exclusive boutiques, gradually replacing my daughter's wardrobe with designer labels. When I suggested meeting for lunch one Tuesday, Catherine sighed. "I can't, Mom. Judith and I have spa appointments, and then we're looking at vacation properties in Palm Springs." "Maybe this weekend then?" I asked hopefully. "We're having dinner at the Andersons. They're on the hospital board with Judith. Maybe next month." For months after the wedding, we gathered at Judith's mansion for Thanksgiving. Her home was intimidating, a sprawling 6-bedroom colonial with manicured gardens and a 3-car garage housing a Bentley, a Mercedes, and a BMW. I'd spent hours making my special cranberry relish, a recipe passed down from my grandmother that Catherine had always loved. When I arrived, the kitchen was bustling with catering staff preparing a gourmet meal. "Oh, you brought homemade cranberry sauce," Judith said, taking the container with 2 fingers as if it might contaminate her. "How traditional. We've ordered an organic cranberry pomegranate compote from that new chef who was on Food Network, but I suppose we could put this out too. Somewhere." The container disappeared, never making it to the elaborate table setting. During dinner, Judith dominated the conversation, frequently referencing experiences that excluded me. Charity galas, country club functions, mutual acquaintances I'd never met. Catherine laughed at Judith's jokes, adopted her mannerisms, and barely acknowledged my presence. After dessert, I offered to help with dishes, but Judith waved me off. "The staff will handle it, Eleanor. Why don't you rest? You look tired." I excused myself to use the restroom but took a wrong turn in the massive house. Passing an open door, I heard Catherine's voice and paused. "I know, right?" she was saying to Judith. Mom shows up with homemade cranberry sauce like we're having dinner in her little ranch house. It's embarrassing. Darling, you can't blame her, Judith replied. She doesn't know any better. That's what happens when you never elevate yourself. Thank goodness you had the sense to marry into a family that can show you a better way. Sometimes I can hardly believe we're related. Catherine laughed. Did you see her shoes? So middle class. My heart cracked listening to my daughter mock the very life I'd worked so hard to provide her. The shoes she ridiculed had been purchased instead of replacing my 15-year-old refrigerator that constantly made concerning noises. I cleared my throat and stepped into view. Both women froze, Judith recovering first with a practiced smile. Eleanor dear, are you lost? The guest bathroom is in the other wing. I heard you, I said quietly, looking directly at my daughter. Both of you. Catherine's face flushed. Mom, we were just joking around. About my shoes? Or about my embarrassing middle-class life? The one I built working 2 jobs to put you through college. You're overreacting, Catherine said, rolling her eyes at Judith as if they shared a private joke. It's not like we said anything that wasn't true. This is my world now, Mom. Maybe you should try to, I don't know, update yourself a little? Judith offered to introduce you to her stylist. I stared at my daughter, this stranger wearing expensive clothes and parroting Judith's condescending tone. I need to go, I said finally. Mom, don't be dramatic, Catherine called as I walked away. It's Thanksgiving. I drove home in silence, tears streaming down my face. When Catherine called the next day, I expected an apology. Instead, she launched into a defensive tirade. You embarrass me in front of Judith, she said accusingly. Walking out like that was so childish. Catherine, you were making fun of me. Your own mother. It was just girl talk. Judith says you're being oversensitive. This is why it's hard to include you in things. You just don't fit in with our lifestyle. Our lifestyle? Or Judith's lifestyle that you're trying to copy? See? There you go again, being judgmental. Judith has been nothing but generous to me. She understands the kind of life I want. Why can't you be happy for me instead of making me feel guilty for enjoying nice things? The conversation ended with Catherine refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing and me feeling more distant than ever from my only child. In the months that followed, our interactions became increasingly strained. Catherine adopted more of Judith's speaking patterns, preferences, and prejudices. The daughter who once shared ice cream and secrets with me was disappearing behind a facade of wealth and status. I continued reaching out, sending cards, suggesting lunches. Most were ignored or declined. When we did meet, Catherine spent most of the time on her phone or comparing our activities unfavorably to whatever Judith had recently arranged. Judith took us to the symphony last weekend, she'd say dismissively when I suggested a movie. Or, this restaurant is fine, I guess, but Judith introduced us to this amazing French chef who creates the most divine-tasting menus. My heart ached, but I never stopped trying. After all, she was my only child, my last connection to Robert, and despite everything, I loved her unconditionally. But as my birthday approached, I couldn't help wondering if my daughter remembered who I really was, or if she even cared anymore. As my 67th birthday approached, I decided to host a small gathering at my home. Nothing extravagant, just a casual dinner with a few close friends and family members. Despite our strained relationship, I hoped Catherine would attend without Judith's influence looming over us. I spent days preparing, cleaning the house from top to bottom, planning a menu of comfort foods Catherine had loved growing up. I made her favorite lemon cake from scratch and set the table with the good china that had belonged to my mother. Though my expectations were modest, a small part of me hoped this might be an opportunity to reconnect with my daughter. On the day of the party, my closest friend Marge arrived early to help with final preparations. You've outdone yourself, Eleanor, she said, surveying the dining room with its fresh flowers and carefully arranged place settings. Are you sure Catherine's coming? She confirmed yesterday, I replied, trying to hide my nervousness. She said she and Derek would be here by 6. 6 o'clock came and went with no sign of Catherine. My other guests arrived: my sister Patricia and her husband, 2 couples from my book club, and a retired colleague from school. We made awkward small talk as I kept glancing at the door. At 6:45, just as I was considering serving dinner without them, The doorbell rang. I hurried to answer it, relief washing over me. But my smile faltered when I saw not only Catherine and Derek on my porch but Judith standing smugly behind them. "Happy birthday, Mom," Catherine said, air-kissing my cheek. "You remember Derek's mother, Judith? I hope you don't mind, but she was in town and I couldn't just leave her alone at the house." "Of course," I managed, though I'd specifically not invited Judith to this intimate gathering. "Please come in." Derek at least had the grace to look uncomfortable, handing me a bottle of wine. "Happy birthday, Eleanor." "Eleanor, your home is cozy," Judith remarked, glancing around with barely concealed disdain. "So quaint and nostalgic, like stepping back in time." I led them to the dining room where my friends greeted them warmly despite the obvious tension. Judith immediately dominated the conversation, talking about the Mediterranean cruise she just returned from, and the celebrity chef who had personally prepared meals for her group. "You simply haven't lived until you've had authentic paella in Valencia," she proclaimed, as if addressing a classroom of ignorant children. Throughout dinner, Catherine barely spoke to me, instead reinforcing Judith's stories with enthusiastic nods and "Isn't that amazing?" comments. My carefully prepared meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables and homemade rolls, was picked at by both women, though Derek ate heartily and complimented me twice. After dinner came the moment I'd been dreading: gifts. My friends presented me with thoughtful items: a beautiful scarf, a first edition of my favorite novel, a gift certificate for a massage. Then Derek handed Judith a small, elegantly wrapped box. "This is just a little something to thank you for welcoming us into your home," he said, though I noticed his eyes darting nervously between his wife and mother. Judith unwrapped the package with exaggerated care, gasping dramatically as she opened the velvet box. Inside lay a stunning sapphire necklace on a delicate gold chain. "It's to match your eyes," Catherine explained, beaming at her mother-in-law. "Derek and I saw it and immediately thought of you." "It's absolutely exquisite," Judith gushed, immediately putting it on and preening. "You shouldn't have. Though of course, I did help you choose those lovely drapes for your living room last month, so perhaps it's a thank you for my impeccable taste." Everyone turned expectantly toward Catherine, waiting for her to present something to me. She reached into her purse and pulled out a department store greeting card, sliding it across the table without ceremony. "This is for you, Mom," she said flatly. I opened the envelope, finding a generic birthday card with Catherine's signature. Not even a personal message. I looked up, confused and hurt. "Is this it?" I asked softly. Catherine's eyes hardened. "You don't deserve a gift, Mom. You should be grateful I even came. It's not like you've been supportive of my life choices lately." The room fell silent. My sister Patricia gasped audibly. Marge's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. Judith smirked, fingering her new necklace. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've always supported you, Catherine." "Please," she scoffed. "You constantly judge me for spending time with Judith. You make snide comments about our lifestyle. You act like I've betrayed you just because I enjoy the finer things now." "That's not true," I protested. "I've only ever wanted your happiness." "My happiness is with Derek and his family," she snapped. "They understand ambition and class. They don't make me feel guilty for wanting more than this." She gestured dismissively around my home. The home where I'd raised her, where we'd built thousands of memories together. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Catherine, maybe we should." "No, Derek," she interrupted. "Mom needs to hear this. I'm tired of her passive-aggressive disappointment. At least Judith is honest about wanting the best for me." Judith placed a manicured hand on Catherine's arm. "Now, darling, remember what we discussed about managing difficult family situations with grace." My friends and sister exchanged horrified glances. I felt as if I'd been slapped, but years of teaching had taught me to maintain composure in difficult situations. With trembling hands, I stood and began collecting dinner plates. "I think it's time for cake," I said quietly. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I served the lemon cake that Catherine barely touched, opened more presents from my sympathetic friends, and made small talk while feeling completely hollowed out inside. Judith continued to dominate conversations, Catherine continued to ignore me, and by the time they left early, claiming another engagement. I was emotionally exhausted. After everyone had gone, I sat alone at my dining table surrounded by discarded wrapping paper and half-empty coffee cups. The card from Catherine lay open beside me, its generic printed message mocking all the years of love and sacrifice. In the silence of my empty house, I finally allowed myself to cry deep, gut-wrenching sobs that had been building for years. I cried for the sweet little girl who once made me macaroni necklaces for my birthday. I cried for the teenager who, despite occasional attitude, had written me beautiful cards thanking me for being both mother and father. I cried for the young woman who had once valued character over materialism. Most of all, I cried for myself, for the mother who had given everything only to be told she didn't deserve anything in return. As tears streamed down my face, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of putting Catherine first had led to this moment of utter disrespect. Perhaps it was time to finally put myself first, and in doing so, teach my daughter the lesson she so desperately needed to learn. The morning after my disastrous birthday party, I woke with swollen eyes and a surprising sense of clarity. For years, I'd been enabling Catherine's increasingly entitled behavior, making excuses for her rudeness, accepting scraps of her attention as if I should be grateful for them. Something had to change. Not just for my sake but for hers too. As I made my morning coffee, my gaze fell on a photograph I kept on the refrigerator. Robert and me standing proudly in front of a small beachfront property we'd purchased the year before Catherine was born. It was our one big financial splurge, bought when coastal property was still relatively affordable. Our retirement plan, Robert had called it, wrapping his arms around me as we watched waves crash on the shore. Someday we'll live here full-time, walk on the beach every morning, and spoil our grandkids rotten. After Robert died, I'd kept the property but rarely visited. It held too many memories, too many dreams that would never be fulfilled. I'd almost forgotten about it until this moment. The modest two-bedroom cottage sat on nearly an acre of prime beachfront land that had, over the decades, become incredibly valuable as development transformed the once sleepy coastal town into a desirable vacation destination. I'd never told Catherine about the property. Initially, it was too painful to discuss anything that had been so important to Robert. Later, as she grew older, I'd considered it her inheritance, something she would receive after I was gone. Now, as I stared at the faded photograph, an idea began forming in my mind. That afternoon, I called Malcolm Peters, the financial advisor who had helped me manage my teacher's pension and modest investments over the years. "Eleanor, it's been too long," Malcolm greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you today?" "I'd like to know the current value of the beachfront property in Sandpiper Cove," I said. "And I'm considering selling it." There was a pause on the line. "Are you sure? You've held on to that property for 40 years now? I thought you were saving it for Catherine." "Things change, Malcolm. Could you give me an estimate?" "Well, without a formal appraisal, but based on recent sales in that area, I'd say conservatively $3 to $4 million. Possibly more with the right buyer. Development has exploded there, and your lot size is substantial." I nearly dropped the phone. When Robert and I had purchased the property, we'd paid $75,000. A stretch for us at the time. $3 to $4 million? I repeated weakly. "Minimum," Malcolm confirmed. "That area has become extremely desirable. You're sitting on a gold mine, Eleanor. But may I ask why you're considering selling now?" I explained the situation with Catherine, Judith's influence, and the birthday incident. Malcolm listened patiently. "I understand you're hurt," he said when I finished. "But selling a valuable asset as an emotional response might not be the wisest move. Why don't you sleep on it?" But in the days that followed, my resolve only strengthened. I wasn't acting emotionally. I was finally setting boundaries. I scheduled an appointment with Linda Abernathy, an attorney specializing in estate planning and real estate. "You have several options," Linda explained after reviewing my situation. "You could sell the property and do whatever you wish with the proceeds. You could place it in a trust with specific conditions for Catherine to inherit. Or you could donate it or a portion of the proceeds to charity for a significant tax benefit." The mention of charity sparked something inside me. Throughout my teaching career, I'd witnessed the struggles of single parents, particularly single mothers, trying to provide opportunities for their children while keeping roofs over their heads. I thought of my own challenges after Robert's death. What about creating a foundation? I asked. Something to help single parents with education costs for their children? Linda smiled. That's certainly possible. We could establish a nonprofit organization with specific parameters for how the funds are distributed. Over the next week, I researched educational foundations and scholarships for single parents. I spoke with real estate agents about the property's value, confirming Malcolm's estimate was actually conservative. I even drove out to visit the cottage for the first time in years. Standing on the weathered deck overlooking the ocean, I felt Robert's presence stronger than I had in years. Am I doing the right thing? I whispered to the sea breeze. No audible answer came, but a sense of peace settled over me. This wasn't about punishing Catherine. It was about honoring the values Robert and I had shared: hard work, education, compassion for others. I contacted Blue Coast Realty, the leading agency in the area, and arranged for an appraisal. Melissa Jenkins, their top agent, walked the property with me, her enthusiasm growing with each step. Mrs. Thompson, this location is absolutely prime, she gushed. The lot size alone makes it exceptional. Most of the parcels around here were subdivided years ago, and having the original cottage adds charm, though most buyers would likely rebuild to maximize the views. What would your estimate be? I asked. She named a figure that made my head spin. Nearly $5 million. And that's conservative. With multiple interested buyers, we could see a bidding war. Within days of listing the property, Melissa called with news of several serious inquiries. 2 potential buyers had already scheduled viewings for the following week. This is moving faster than even I anticipated, she admitted. Are you sure you're ready for this? Was I ready? The question echoed in my mind as I prepared for bed that night. Selling the property meant letting go of a tangible connection to Robert, to our shared dreams. But it also meant creating something meaningful from those dreams. A legacy that would help others achieve their own. I thought about Catherine, about how the promise of easy wealth might have shaped her differently than the reality of earning her way. Perhaps I had done her a disservice by not being more transparent about finances, about the value of hard work and delayed gratification. On my nightstand sat the generic birthday card she'd given me. Its store-bought sentiment a stark reminder of how far we'd drifted apart. Beside it lay a handmade card she'd created for my 45th birthday, covered in glitter and heartfelt words of appreciation for the best mom in the world who worked so hard to give me everything. The contrast between these 2 expressions of sentiment crystallized my decision. Tomorrow I would move forward with the sale. Not out of spite, but out of hope that sometimes, the greatest gift we can give our children is the opportunity to recognize the difference between what they want and what they truly need. 2 weeks after listing the beachfront property, I received a call from Judith Williams. Her overly friendly tone immediately put me on guard. Eleanor, darling. It's been too long since we've had a proper chat. I'm hosting a little dinner party this Friday at Le Bernardin. Nothing fancy, just family. I insist you join us. The invitation was so unexpected that I momentarily lost my ability to speak. In the 3 years since Catherine and Derek's wedding, Judith had never once extended a social invitation directly to me. I'm surprised to hear from you, Judith. I finally managed. Nonsense. We're practically family. 8 o'clock sharp. Derek will send a car for you. Before I could respond, she had hung up. The whole interaction left me puzzled and suspicious. Nevertheless, on Friday evening, I found myself being driven to one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, wondering what Judith could possibly be planning. Le Bernardin was exactly the type of establishment Judith favored. Elegant, expensive, and designed to intimidate those unaccustomed to such luxury. As the maitre d' led me to a private dining room, I straightened my shoulders and reminded myself that I had nothing to prove to these people. Judith, Derek, and Catherine were already seated at a beautifully appointed table. My daughter barely looked up as I entered, though Derek stood politely. Judith, however, swooped toward me with unprecedented warmth. Eleanor, you look absolutely lovely tonight. That shade of blue is so becoming on you. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her expensive perfume momentarily overwhelming me. Throughout the appetizer course, Judith maintained this peculiar friendliness, asking about my book club, my garden, even my thoughts on current events. Catherine remained mostly silent, occasionally exchanging glances with Derek that I couldn't interpret. As our main courses arrived, Judith finally revealed her hand. Eleanor, Catherine mentioned you've been quite busy lately. Something about meeting with real estate agents. Ah, there it was. Yes, I replied calmly, cutting into my perfectly cooked salmon. I've had a few appointments. How interesting, Judith pressed. Catherine seemed to think you might be selling property. I didn't realize you had real estate investments. I took a sip of water, noting how Catherine suddenly seemed intensely interested in our conversation. It's not something I discuss much. Mom, Catherine interjected, unable to contain herself further. Are you selling our house? Where will you live? Not our house, no, I said carefully. Then what? Catherine demanded. I placed my fork down deliberately. I'm selling the beachfront property in Sandpiper Cove. Derek looked confused. I didn't know you owned beachfront property. Neither did I, Catherine said accusingly. Your father and I purchased it before you were born, I explained. It's about an acre of land with a small cottage, right on the water. Sandpiper Cove? Judith's eyes widened slightly. That's become quite an exclusive area. Waterfront properties there are substantial. Yes, I agreed. The most recent appraisal valued it at just under $5 million. The reaction was immediate. Catherine's water glass froze halfway to her mouth. Derek's eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. And Judith, calculating manipulative Judith, couldn't quite hide the flash of naked avarice that crossed her face before her social mask slipped back into place. $5 million? Catherine whispered, setting her glass down with a trembling hand. You have a property worth $5 million and never told me? It wasn't relevant until now, I replied. Not relevant? Catherine's voice rose. How could that possibly not be relevant? That's a fortune. It's a piece of land that held sentimental value, I corrected. Your father and I bought it with the intention of retiring there someday. After he died, I couldn't bear to visit, but I kept it as an investment. And now you're selling it, Catherine stated flatly. Why? I've been reevaluating my priorities lately, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Thinking about the legacy I want to leave. Judith leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet. Eleanor, what a wonderful surprise this is. You know, I've always said you were such a prudent woman. This just confirms it. The sudden shift in her demeanor would have been comical if it weren't so transparent. The woman who had spent years subtly belittling me was now looking at me as if I were her dearest friend. Thank you, Judith, I said neutrally. Have you considered what you'll do with the proceeds? She continued. At your age, estate planning becomes so important. I'd be happy to introduce you to our financial advisor. He handles all the Williams family investments. That's very kind, but I have excellent advisors of my own. Catherine had been unusually quiet, her mind clearly racing. Finally, she asked, So when were you planning to tell me about this? I wasn't under the impression you were interested in my financial affairs, I replied. You've made it quite clear that my lifestyle and choices don't meet your standards. Derek, who had been watching this exchange with growing discomfort, cleared his throat. I think I'll check on our dessert order, he muttered, escaping the increasingly tense atmosphere. As soon as he was gone, Catherine dropped all pretense. Mom, you can't sell that property without discussing it with me first. I'm your only child. That's my inheritance you're talking about. Is it? I asked mildly. I don't recall promising you anything. But it's understood. Parents leave their assets to their children. That's how it works. Perhaps in families where children value their relationships with their parents, I said. Where there's mutual respect and appreciation. Judith interjected smoothly. Now ladies, let's not get emotional. Eleanor, of course Catherine is just surprised. This is a lot to process. Maybe we should all take a breath and discuss this rationally. Ignoring her, Catherine followed me as I excused myself to visit the restroom. In the private hallway, away from Judith's calculating gaze, my daughter's composed facade crumbled. Mom, please, she said, grabbing my arm. Tell me you're not really selling the property. I have 3 serious offers already, I replied. The listing agent expects we'll have a contract within the week. No, don't sell the villa, Catherine pleaded, genuine distress in her eyes for the first time in years. You can't do this. That's my future you're selling. I gently removed her hand from my arm. Your future? Catherine, you've made it abundantly clear that you don't need anything from me. You have Derek, you have Judith, you have your lifestyle that I could never understand or appreciate. That's different. This is $5 million we're talking about. So it's only my money you're interested in? Not my love, not my company, not my birthday celebrations. I shook my head sadly. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? This isn't fair, she protested, tears welling in her eyes. You're punishing me.
No, Catherine.
I'm finally setting boundaries. For years, I've allowed you to treat me with contempt, while I continue to love you unconditionally. I've watched you transform from a kind, appreciative young woman into someone who thinks her own mother doesn't deserve even a thoughtful birthday gift. I didn't mean. You did mean it, I interrupted gently. And that's the problem. You've become someone who believes people only deserve kindness if they provide material value to you. That's not how I raised you, and it's not how I intend to live the rest of my life. So what are you going to do with the money? She demanded, anger replacing her momentary vulnerability. Blow it on cruises and shopping sprees? I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing expensive clothes and Judith's attitudes, and felt a profound sadness. I'm establishing a foundation, I said quietly, the Robert Thompson Educational Foundation for Single Parents, to help people who are working as hard as I did to provide opportunities for their children, without expecting those children to repay them with anything but love and basic human decency. Catherine stared at me, speechless for perhaps the first time since she'd entered Judith's orbit. In that moment of silence, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a brief acknowledgement of what she had become and what she had lost. You don't have to do this, she finally whispered. Yes, I replied. For both our sakes I do. As we returned to the table, where Judith was clearly straining to appear unconcerned, I felt lighter than I had in years. The property had been a burden of unrealized dreams for too long. Now it would become something meaningful, not just for strangers who would benefit from the foundation, but hopefully for my daughter as well, who desperately needed to relearn the values that money couldn't buy. In the days following the revelation at Le Bernardin, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from Catherine. Initially, they were angry and accusatory. How could you hide this from me all these years? You're just being spiteful because you're jealous of my relationship with Judith. I can't believe you would betray Dad's memory like this. I read each message but didn't immediately respond, giving both of us time to process our emotions. After 3 days of unanswered texts, the tone began to shift. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. I'm worried about you making hasty decisions. Can we please meet for coffee? Just the 2 of us. On the 4th day, as I was reviewing paperwork from Linda Abernathy about establishing the foundation, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Derek standing alone on my porch, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. No sign of Catherine or Judith. Eleanor, he said when I opened the door. May I come in? I think we need to talk. I led him to the living room, noting how he glanced around with new interest, perhaps seeing my modest home through a different lens now that he knew about the beachfront property. Catherine doesn't know I'm here, he admitted, declining my offer of coffee. Things have been tense since dinner with Judith. I can imagine, I replied neutrally. Derek ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd never seen from him before. There's something you should know, he said finally, about our situation. Over the next hour, Derek revealed the carefully constructed facade that had been their life for the past 3 years. Despite appearances, they were not the financially secure young couple they pretended to be. Judith has expectations, he explained, about how we should live, where we should live, what car we should drive, what vacations we should take. The townhouse, the furniture, even Catherine's wardrobe, it's all smoke and mirrors. What do you mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. The townhouse isn't a gift from my mother. It's a loan with interest. Same with the car, the country club membership, even our honeymoon. Everything comes with strings attached, with the expectation that I'll eventually take over my father's position at the firm and repay her generosity. And Catherine doesn't mind this arrangement? Derek looked pained. Catherine doesn't fully understand it. My mother has a way of presenting these obligations as gifts. She tells Catherine, "Don't worry about the details, darling. It's what family does for each other." Meanwhile, she reminds me privately about my responsibilities and family obligations. I see, I said, pieces falling into place. And your father? Dad's been emotionally checked out of the marriage for years. He lets Mom handle the family business while he focuses on the firm. He doesn't know, or doesn't want to know, how she manipulates everyone around her, including isolating you from other family members? Derek looked surprised. How did you know? I've noticed you never mention your father's relatives. Judith only ever talks about her side of the family. He nodded grimly. My father's brother, my Uncle Charlie, disapproved of how my mother controlled everything. After a particularly heated argument at Thanksgiving when I was 16, she declared his family toxic and cut them off completely. I haven't seen my cousins in over 15 years. The parallels to my own situation with Catherine were painfully obvious. Judith had a pattern of isolating people from anyone who might challenge her influence. Why are you telling me this now, Derek? He sighed deeply. Because after dinner the other night, I realized something. My mother doesn't care about Catherine. Not really. The moment she found out about your property, everything changed. Suddenly you were dear Eleanor, instead of the middle-class teacher she's been subtly mocking for years. And Catherine is. He hesitated. She's lost Eleanor. She got caught up in the lifestyle my mother dangled in front of her. The status, the appearances, the social connections. But lately I've noticed her becoming increasingly anxious, trying desperately to meet impossible standards. Standards set by Judith, I murmured. Exactly. And now with this property revelation, it's like something broke. She's been crying for days, alternating between anger at you for hiding this asset and anger at herself. Last night she said something that worried me. I don't even recognize myself anymore. The admission sent a pang through my heart. Despite everything, Catherine was still my daughter. What do you want from me, Derek? Nothing, he said firmly. That's why I came without telling Catherine or my mother. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. Whatever you decide to do with your property is your business. But I want you to know that I support your boundary setting with Catherine. She needs it, even if she doesn't realize it yet. After Derek left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing everything he had shared. The doorbell rang again just after 7 that evening. This time it was Catherine alone without makeup, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater I hadn't seen her wear in years. Can I come in? She asked quietly. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the years. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Catherine broke the silence. Derek told me he came to see you today. Yes. Did he tell you about our situation? I nodded. I should have told you myself, she admitted. I was embarrassed. It was easier to pretend everything was perfect than admit I'd gotten myself into this trap. It's not entirely your fault, I said gently. Judith is very skilled at manipulation. But I let her manipulate me, Catherine countered. I chose to believe her when she said you were holding me back, that your values were outdated, that your lifestyle was something to be ashamed of rather than respected. Her voice broke. I was so awful to you. Tears welled in my eyes. Yes, you were. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she continued. Especially after how I behaved at your birthday. That was unforgivable. Nothing is unforgivable between a parent and child, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. Trust has to be rebuilt. Catherine nodded, wiping away tears. I understand. I know I can't just say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. She hesitated. Are you really selling the property? Yes. And creating a foundation? Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Dad would have liked that, she finally said. It was the first time she'd mentioned her father without prompting in years. I think so too. Mom, I don't expect anything from you anymore. I don't deserve it. But I would like a chance to find my way back to being the daughter you raised. The person Dad would have been proud of. What about Judith? I asked. Catherine's expression hardened. Derek and I had a long talk last night. We've decided to move out of the townhouse. Find something we can actually afford on our own. No more loans disguised as gifts. She won't make that easy. No, she won't. But it's necessary. Catherine took a deep breath. Derek's also reached out to his Uncle Charlie. We're having dinner with him next week. Judith doesn't know yet. It was a significant step. One that would undoubtedly trigger Judith's wrath. I'm proud of you both for making these difficult decisions. There's one more thing, Catherine said hesitantly. Derek and we've started seeing a therapist. Together and separately. I have a lot to work through about why I was so easily influenced, why I treated you so terribly. For the first time in years, I saw genuine humility in my daughter's eyes. Not the performance of contrition to get what she wanted, but real painful self-awareness. That's a good step, I said. The therapist suggested that maybe, if you're willing, you might join us for a session sometime. Not right away, but eventually. I reached across the table and took her hand. The first physical contact we'd had in months that wasn't a perfunctory air kiss. I'd be open to that. When you're ready. As Catherine left that evening, neither of us was under any illusion that one conversation could heal years of damage. The road ahead would be long and likely difficult, especially once Judith realized her control was slipping. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt hopeful about my relationship with my daughter. The beachfront property sold 2 weeks later for $5.2 million, slightly above asking price. As I signed the final paperwork, I felt Robert's presence strongly, approving of this new direction. The Robert Thompson Educational Foundation for Single Parents would be his legacy as much as mine, helping others achieve their dreams while teaching our own daughter the true meaning of values, boundaries, and unconditional love. 6 months after selling the beachfront property, I stood at a podium in the community college auditorium, looking out at the faces of 24 single parents, mostly mothers, but a few fathers as well, who had been selected as the first recipients of scholarships from the Robert Thompson Educational Foundation. Education changed my life, I told them, and gave me the tools to provide for my daughter after my husband passed away. These scholarships aren't charity. They're investments in your futures and the futures of your children. All we ask in return is that you remember to pass on not just financial support, but the values of hard work, perseverance, and integrity to the next generation. In the front row sat Catherine and Derek, both applauding enthusiastically. Beside them was Patricia, my sister, who had helped design the foundation's logo, a lighthouse beacon, symbolizing guidance and hope. The journey to this moment had been filled with challenges, setbacks, and hard-earned growth for all of us. True to their word, Catherine and Derek had moved out of the expensive townhouse and into a modest 2-bedroom apartment they could afford on their combined salaries. Derek had taken a position at a smaller investment firm, away from his father's company and Judith's influence. The pay was less, but he frequently commented on how much he enjoyed the collaborative atmosphere and ethical approach to client relationships. Catherine had returned to her marketing career, declining Judith's offers to speak to some people on her behalf. She was starting over in many ways, rebuilding her professional reputation based on merit rather than connections. It wasn't easy, especially after years of luxury, but each week I saw more of the determined, resilient daughter I had raised. Our weekly dinners had become a cherished ritual. Every Thursday, I would visit their apartment, bringing a homemade dish or sometimes just ingredients so we could cook together. These evenings were healing for all of us, relaxed, authentic, without pretense or performance. Judith, predictably, had not accepted the changes gracefully. When Catherine and Derek announced their intention to move out of the townhouse, she had alternated between tearful accusations of betrayal and icy threats about financial consequences. She actually sent us an itemized bill, Catherine had told me, showing me a spreadsheet detailing every gift with calculated interest. Furniture, clothing, even dinner parties she hosted for our benefit. According to this, we owe her over $200,000. Are you going to pay it? I had asked. Derek consulted a lawyer. Legally, we don't have to since nothing was documented as loans. But we're returning anything we still have, the jewelry, electronics, anything of value that can be given back. The rest. Well, it's an expensive lesson learned. Judith had made one last desperate attempt to maintain control, showing up at my house unannounced on a Sunday afternoon. Eleanor, she'd said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes calculating, I think we need to discuss Catherine and Derek's future. As mothers, we both want what's best for our children. Please come in, Judith, I'd replied politely, though every instinct urged me to close the door. Over tea she had barely touched, Judith outlined her proposal. This foundation idea is admirable, Eleanor, truly. But perhaps you could set aside a portion, say $2 million, in a trust for Catherine? After all, family comes first. Family does come first, I agreed. That's why I'm helping Catherine learn the value of independence and self-sufficiency. But surely a mother wants to provide financial security for her child? I'm providing something more valuable. The opportunity to develop character and resilience. Judith's pleasant mask had slipped then, revealing the manipulative woman beneath. I always knew you resented Catherine's relationship with me. This is just revenge because she chose my guidance over yours. No, Judith. This is love, real love, not control disguised as generosity. She had left in a huff, warning that I would regret my decision when Catherine inevitably came crawling back to her for help. 6 months later, despite Judith's regular attempts to lure them back with promises of financial support, Catherine and Derek remained committed to their independent path. Derek had made perhaps the most surprising transformation, reconnecting with his father's estranged family. His Uncle Charlie had welcomed them warmly, introducing them to cousins they barely knew and sharing stories about Derek's father before Judith had isolated him from his own relatives. It's like discovering a whole part of myself I never knew existed, Derek had explained during one of our Thursday dinners. Uncle Charlie says I laughed just like my dad used to before he married Mom. Therapy had been challenging but transformative for both Catherine and Derek. I had joined them for 3 sessions, which had involved painful but necessary conversations about the hurt we had caused each other. I was so afraid of ending up struggling financially like we did after Dad died, Catherine had admitted during one particularly emotional session. When Judith showed me this world of wealth and security, it seemed like the answer to that fear. I didn't realize it came with such a high cost to my relationships and my integrity. Now, as I concluded my speech at the scholarship ceremony, I felt a profound sense of peace. The foundation had already helped 24 families and would continue to grow, supporting single parents who were working as hard as I had to create opportunities for their children. After the ceremony, as recipients and their families mingled over refreshments, Catherine approached me with a small, wrapped package. "This is for you, Mom," she said shyly. "I know it's not your birthday or any special occasion, but I wanted you to have it." Inside was a beautiful silver locket. When I opened it, I found 3 photos carefully arranged inside. Robert holding newborn Catherine, me at my teaching retirement party, and a recent picture of Catherine, Derek, and me at our Thursday dinner. 3 generations of Thompsons, Catherine explained, her eyes moist. The past, present, and hopefully the future. "It's beautiful," I whispered, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Thank you." "Thank you," she countered, "for not giving up on me even when I deserved it. For loving me enough to set boundaries instead of enabling me." As I fastened the locket around my neck, I thought about the journey we had taken. The beachfront property that Robert and I had purchased as young newlyweds had indeed become our retirement plan, though not in the way we had imagined. Instead of a place to live out our golden years, it had become something far more valuable. A catalyst for healing, growth, and positive change. I had kept a small portion of the proceeds, enough to ensure my own comfort in retirement and to establish a modest trust for future grandchildren, should they come. This wasn't contradicting my principles about earning rather than being given. It was acknowledging that true family legacy involves both financial responsibility and values transmission. Later that evening, as Catherine, Derek, and I walked through the park near their apartment, my daughter looped her arm through mine. A spontaneous gesture of affection that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Dad would be proud today, she said softly. Of the foundation, of you standing your ground, even of me finally growing up at 32. He would be proud of all of us, I agreed, for finding our way back to what matters. As the setting sun cast long shadows across the path, I felt a lightness in my heart that had been absent for too long. Money hadn't bought this peace, in fact, it had nearly destroyed it. The true wealth in my life had always been love, character, and connection. By selling the villa, I hadn't lost an asset. I'd reclaimed these priceless values for myself and ultimately for my daughter as well. What do you think about Eleanor's decision to sell the villa and create a foundation instead of leaving it to her daughter? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in life's most challenging moments. Remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give our loved ones isn't what they want, but what they need to grow. Thank you for watching, and may you find the courage to stand firm in your own values, even when it's difficult.